3, 2, 1, go. Welcome to Grounds After Rounds.
Go?
Welcome.
Go where? What? Oh, we blew it again.
I'm low on gas and you need a jacket.
What? I'm low on gas and you need a jacket. What's that from?
What was it? It was in, I think it was Wayne's World. And I can't remember if like Garth was getting in a fight. What was it?
It couldn't have been the first one.
No, it wasn't a fight. But someone said something like, do you want to go? Or let's go. God, I can't remember. But all I remember is Garth's response was, go where? I'm low on gas and you need a jacket. I can't remember who he was talking. He was talking. It was because remember
he's probably talking to.
It was
Rob
Wayne's
Lowe.
World 2. No, it was Wayne's World 2. It wasn't a fight. It was Wayne's World 2, and he was talking to the girl that he was with because it wasn't Claudia Schiffer.
Kim Basinger.
Is that who it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that's the Foxy. Foxy. When she comes walking in. I think that's in the first one though.
No, I think you're right though. I think Kim Basinger might be. Anyway, Wayne's World 2. Look it up. But yeah, she's. I can't remember what she said to him.
There you go, folks. You got your homework. Help us out. Dial in. Leave us a comment and review because you have made it back to Grounds After Rounds.
Grounds After Rounds.
Coach Jack and
Coach Jack. Eric.
Yeah. Dang it!
It's been so long.
We take 1 week off, and I get like 6 emails and texts. Is there a podcast? Did you guys release a podcast? Are we doing a podcast this week? And I love a lot of it.
It's funny. No one asked me.
There was a couple. There's a couple use of the plural first person pronoun. Are we doing a podcast this week?
Yeah.
And I would have been like, "Oh, were you on that?"
You didn't send it to me. Let me go ahead and upload it.
Which I appreciate I appreciate that we've established or created a culture where people feel invested enough that they do have an emotional skin in the game or buy-in. Right. But that emotional skin in the game doesn't often translate to then like actually sending like copy or content for me to then upload.
Exactly.
But I appreciated we were good. We just we lost track of the week last week and the days, and then next thing you know, it was Friday, and I didn't have any podcasts to upload.
Dude, so here's your break.
Silence, man. Silence.
It's a good catch-up day anyway.
Yeah.
It's just been, go find your favorite one.
I'll tell you that I've been listening to Revisionist History, Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. So freaking fun. Like, he's just, I find him hilarious. As long as you come into it, like, he is not offering this is the truth. Sometimes his look at things is completely biased and inaccurate, and he's just sort of playing the I'm going to poke holes just for the sake of poking holes.
Yeah.
The most recent one from season 4, the first 2 episodes of season 4, season 5 just released. Season 4 talks about tortoise and hare, so the idea of law school and the LSAT. In the first episode, he and his assistant take the LSAT to see who wins. And you don't learn who's won until the end of the second one. But you got to listen to part 1 first, then you listen to part 2.
Okay.
And it's quite insightful on how, as a society, we as Westerners prioritize speed over quality for testing and admission, and then on like picking. It's called same bias or similarity biasing. That rather than actually look for the best applicant, I just look for the applicant who looks the most like me. And so like somebody who's been to Harvard or went to Harvard, well, if I'm looking for a clerk in my judge, in my Supreme Court, I'm only going to look for applicants that went to Harvard, had good LSAT scores, blah, 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 because I only got one chance. But when you actually look at the lawyers and the judges who are most successful and impactful, they're not those students. Right. And so like actually designing a selection system for the most effective takes too long for us culturally, even if it does yield a better result. Yeah. And that's all he was like offering is like, why do we prioritize speed over long-term quality? Yeah. And it was an interesting 2-parter. So highly recommend Revisionist History. Not sponsored, though. Malcolm Mr. Malcolm Gladwell, if you
Would be
are looking
opposed.
to like join I mean, like you could come do like a CrossFit special and then
Right.
like come on our podcast. Or...
Speaking of which, Stonehenge golf. It's been a while. Todd said something to me, but just put it, when we were signing up, no, he said just put it on the Stonehenge golf account.
That ran dry. Sorry, buddy. We're gonna need a recharge.
It was a lifetime, but we didn't realize that the lifetime was going to last over 100 episodes. So we thought it was going to last like 8.
I still have that $5 bill tucked away somewhere.
Cool.
Good stuff. So deadlifts today. Loved it.
Yeah.
Super
Excited.
fun. People were so smart. Really, really responsible and deliberate. Public service announcement as we come back and we get barbells back into it. Lighter than you think you need to. Start light. Long trajectory, folks. Low trajectory, long horizon. But
Distant horizon. Low trajectory, distant horizon. That's the same thing.
whatever.
Yeah, same thing.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying. We're in it for
So
the
make
long.
sure you quoted Ben Bergeron exactly.
I don't think that's his. I think he stole it from.
I'm pretty sure it's Ben Bergeron.
I think he stole it from either.
Ben Bergeron of Community Fitness.
Yeah. Easy, big guy. The idea being that we're at this for the long game, and we want you to come back. But as I said to the morning classes, you're grown adults. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to rupture your L4, L5, by all means, go ahead. I'll help you into your car and see you in a year. So your 3-month hiatus from barbells may just become a 9-month hiatus from barbells. But I don't
Make
want
sure
you to do that.
If
So
you do
don't
rupture, at least make sure you PR.
that. And then pee your pants.
Make it worth it.
But
Yeah,
no, it was
I'm
fun.
excited.
Nobody
Fun.
did that. Everybody was awesome. Super. I'll tell you what. There were a couple PRs. Positioning, amazing. People looked awesome, and
Yeah.
that makes me very happy. That's a testament to the gymnastics work
Yeah.
that people have been putting in, and so yeah, really, really fun. So speaking of work, we're gonna do some work today, man.
Yeah.
Do some nerd work.
Nerd work.
Nerd alert.
This is right up your alley.
Yeah, it is. I'm so excited.
This is totally one where I've been like, Joan, maybe you step in on this one.
Should have called her in. Get
But
a
she's,
guest appearance.
But this is from her, an email she sent us.
Yeah.
in
So we're coming at
regards
it
to-
Vocab Rehab.
Vocab Rehab.
Vocab Rehab.
I need that actual sound effect.
Yeah.
Talking Elite Fitness has that sound effect.
We're talking words today. Talking words.
Talking words.
Talking words.
Talking real good.
Yeah. Getting real smart. In support of our book club this Friday night.
This Friday. So
So-
by the time you hear this, tomorrow, June 26th at 6:30 p.m. via the Zoom. If it's full and you can't register for the Zoom link, it will be broadcasted on the Facebooks.
If we fill that up with so it's 100
Yeah.
people, 100 participants can sign up. If we fill I just would be. I mean, like, I'd be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But like, that'd be so freaking cool. It'd be a cool experiment of the power of like
Yeah.
tendril connections.
Yeah.
That people passed it out to their friends or whatever, and I think that would be really neat. But as Eric said, if it does fill, it will be streaming live on Facebook, hopefully.
Yeah.
if
Fingers
I
crossed.
don't completely screw up
You
the
just won't be able to
comment.
comment. Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
just be watching it.
Or you could always send Joan a text in the middle of it and say, like, I can't get on, but I have a question.
Truth.
So in support of that, we wanted to explore some of the more powerful, more impactful definitions that Ijeoma Oluo outlines in her text. So you want to talk about race. I would caveat these, or I would say that from the beginning, these are not just her definitions, but what she does as an author that is just very powerful and effective is that first off, it's broken down, each chapter is broken down into like a question. So if you think about the construct, so you want to talk about race, huh? Well then, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. And so each one is like a question, like, what about ta-ta-ta? What about ta-ta-ta?
Right.
And so in that, before even starting that kind of conversation, so as an author, she's writing as if she's having a conversation with her readers. super effective, so engaging, absolutely loved it, love it. To do that, if you and I are going to have a conversation about CrossFit, we have to define our terms. What do you mean by intensity? What do you mean by functional movement? What do you mean by multi-joint? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what defines a functional movement in CrossFit is multi-joint, irreducible, and it is uniquely designed to move a large load a long distance quickly.
Yes.
Like, that's... And so then we can unpack that definition and be like, oh, okay, so I can shoulder shrug or calf raise, 750 pounds. Is that a functional movement?
No.
No, because it's not multi-joint. You don't move the load a very large distance, and you don't really move. You move a large load, but not very far and not really that fast.
Yeah.
And so your power output is
low.
very low. Your intensity is low. Your gains aren't going to be there. And so that's where when we use definitions to define or frame the conversation, you got to define your definitions, your terms first. And so that's what Vocab Rehab. We're gonna make sure
Rehab.
we're all on the same page. And so, might as well jump into the deep end of the pool first.
Cool. First word.
Racism. It's she offers two definitions of racism. She says it could be this one thing and it could be this other thing. She picks the second one, and I rightfully so, and it's awesome. And it has to do with a prejudice against someone based on race. Would be like, well, I'm not a racist because I don't have prejudice against somebody or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, that's not what we're talking about. It's an action, right? A prejudice against someone based on race. So your words, your actions, your whatever could be that. But there's a little comma. When those prejudices are reinforced by systems of power. And so that second part is what makes this definition more effective in our ongoing conversation, because you, me, in our actions may not have the intention of being racist, right? Like I may have had 100% noble intentions, and that action, though, may prejudice against someone based on their race, because systemically those prejudices got reinforced by a system of power. I like to understand definitions both by their words but then by their example. Can you think of an example of that with the beasts or with our classes that we offer here at CrossFit, at Fairwinds CrossFit?
That would be unintentional, but
that are but they are 100% systemically racist. The manner in which we just sort of this is part of like our process. Like we're looking at these and identifying them and be like, oh crap, how do I change that? What is something I can change or put in place that removes that prejudice based on race? And can you think of one right off the...
you can think the price point of a membership being $185 a month.
Right. And so it's sort of that like, well, I'm a small business with extremely small margin. Like we didn't just pull that price out of the air. Like that's the price that allows us to keep the lights on and pay the membership, pay the rent and mortgage and stuff. And so it's like, okay, can we examine, can there be so I think of like, we send Andrew to Indian Creek School. We send him to a private school. We don't pay full price. They have a gradated scale. They explore donations. They have an endowment. Like there's ways that they offer access to that school to a variety of socioeconomic and racial students, racially diverse students. Maybe we could explore something like that. Right. I think of rides, right? So you're the beast. And I even think of like the class times that we offer. Yeah. We offer it at times that support people who generally have jobs at a very narrow or specific type of, and we don't address, like initially my thought is, well, that's not my job. My job is to say, no, these are the times we offer the classes, but I'm systemically biased by like, white guy working a 9-to-5 job at a place, that was the times that I could offer it. And so inherently, because of a system because of those prejudices are being reinforced by a system of power, my white privilege put me in a position of power, which facilitated me offering these classes at this time. Therefore, though the intention was never to be racist, because of that system of power being reinforced, that inherently is restrictive or obstructive to a more diverse population.
Which is funny. It's kind of ironic as well. Whereas, like, let's say Fiona wanted to do a gymnastics class at 4:00 at Thrive. I can't take you. I'm working. So it's kind of like that.
But they do offer other times, right? Or
sure.
no?
We're just I'm just like
good
playing
example.
it.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
Like there's this. You're right. Like it's that.
And
it's offered at this time.
In the end, and this okay. Eventually the example falls apart. The example is intended to offer I think of rides. You don't go pick up the beasts. You just assume they're going to make it here.
Yeah.
And so a handful of them couldn't get rides from their kids, but they rode their bikes. But they rode their bikes from neighborhoods that had access to here. What happens if a kid doesn't have a bike, can't get access here, right? Like, do we even consider those concerns or things? I would say the answer is a little bit, but not really. Right. And if we want to say that, again, a prejudice against someone based on race, I don't think those prejudices are based on race, but those prejudices have a unintentional byproduct of being obstructive, possibly because of somebody's race. And if you look at just the output, it's all white people, white faces, from sort of the same socioeconomic class. The output is suggesting maybe the system, and this is the second part of this definition, which comes back to why is this definition important versus just saying racism is a prejudice against someone based on race.
Right.
When those prejudices are reinforced by systems of power, that's the part that is sometimes forgotten. And I think it's also a much more inclusive definition that if we let go of our fear and anger and I'm not a racist. No. It's like, I'm not calling you a racist. I'm saying what just happened, your action, your words were racist.
Yeah.
And if I say, I'm going to offer, it's not your fault.
Right.
It is a product of a system whose prejudices are reinforced by systems of power.
Right.
Now there's a little bit of a buffer emotionally that we can turn that fire down a little bit, and we can say, okay, well, I'm a product of that system, so I can take responsibility for my actions. It still hurts. It still requires a little bit of uncomfortableness, but then I can solve systems, and in solving those systems, I can help me, help that person, help me, and I can also help me, or not help me. I can take a look at me and see if I am the problem.
Right. That's a deep.
But it's right. Yeah. It becomes a much more inclusive process that we can all attack systems and help each other kind of come to that realization. So again, words have power.
Yeah.
You posted one of those quotes about words that
was a great one.
Words have power. Words are more than their dictionary definition. Words are how we process the word, how we form our societies, how we codify our morals. If we come back to this definition of racism, bam, right? Yeah. The words we're using, if I say all are welcome, but then the systems I put in place inherently prejudice against a gigantic chunk of society, then I'm saying all are welcome, but my actions are inherently prejudiced and are inherently racist. And so that's it. So if we talk about racism, we're talking about the person, we're talking about the action that person does, whether it's intended or not, and we're talking about the system that those prejudices were reinforced by that are inherently, I'll just read it, when those prejudices are reinforced by a system of power.
Right.
Cool?
Yeah.
I like it.
I do too.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Racism. You want to do the next one?
It's a big word.
You read the next one.
So check your privilege. When someone asks you to check your privilege, they're asking you to pause and consider how the advantages you had in life are contributing to your opinions and actions, and how the lack of disadvantages in certain areas is keeping you from fully understanding the struggles others are facing, and may in fact be contributing to those struggles.
Yeah. So I like this one. This one, if you take it out of the race discussion for a second, just to kind of understand. I think check your privilege can
mean a lot of things. It covers a lot of ground.
It does, and it's a useful heuristic. Heuristic meaning like rule of action. So it's a system. Say, okay, hold on. Let me check my privilege. Let me check my privilege here. Am I thinking of something, or am I thinking a certain way because of a privilege that I took for granted that other people don't have? Mm-hmm. I think of you a lot of times as 12-year-old Eric in algebra or in 12-year-old you'd be in what? We'll just call it math.
Yeah.
You'd just be in math.
Probably
class.
just regular math at 12 years old.
Versus 12-year-old Jack in math class. Can you think of why you maybe struggle in that classroom and I don't?
Undiagnosed ADHD.
Right? And that's ableism. The idea that, dude, school was so easy for me. Like, so easy. Like, so much so that, like, I don't even really remember liking or disliking school. It was just something I had to do to be able to get to practice. Yeah. It was to just sort of like a place to go hang out with my friends. But like doing homework and getting A's and like I say this with almost a sense of like privilege in that I never had to worry. Yeah. I always had food. I always had a lunch. Right. I always had a ride to everywhere I wanted to go. Like I'm ticking off all the white suburban male Western privilege that I get to carry around in my backpack and have like, oh no, I got that. Good to go. Oh no, I got that. Yep. Right. Oh no, I got that. Yep. Yeah. So when I say like, now we'll say something about like immigration or the DACA that just got. Apparently this just became a political podcast, folks. Yeah. But right, like that. Yeah. Oh, I can't believe that. Like, and I don't know the specifics on it, and so that's why it's not worth like if I'm irritating you or you disagree politically on it, like got it. But let's just use that as an example. And I make a claim of like, well, I've earned it. I've earned everything I've gotten up to this point. Like I had to work hard for it. Okay, like yes, there were times where I worked hard, but my working hard was a product of a lot of head starts and a lot of privilege that I didn't have to take into consideration. It was kind of just there. Yeah. And I think of some of Nicole's students as she talks about like the beauty of the system that school has established is everybody is dealing with some learning difference. Right. So there's a much more patient, open, and inclusive approach to making not concessions, but to making structures and like allowing people to come at stuff in different ways, all with the end goal of reading, understanding the material, displaying that understanding. And I mean, and so much so that like from top to bottom, head of school to the teacher in the trenches, is they individually talk about like each and every kid. Yeah. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I think of a metaphor here, right? Somebody walks in and they're your size versus my size. The universality of a workout like Fran says that you should be better at the thrusters. I should be better at the pull-ups. It's the same amount of reps of each. We should be somewhere in the middle. And the thing that doesn't, let's say I'm faster than you. I'm faster than you. You don't have to say it. But I'm faster than you because then we define that as I'm fitter. Right? And it's like, yeah, but I'm taller. The thruster, I got to travel further distance. Yeah, but they're heavier. Like, you should be stronger than me. Like, you know, and like that. So it should all even out. Yeah. Eventually, though, what you get to with CrossFit, even as a universally inclusive, right, like infinitely scalable, is there's this sort of like mean optimal size male, and there's sort of a mean optimal size woman. Like kind of body type and shape and that yields the most power output and the highest intensity across all 10 general physical skills, short, medium, long, blah, blah, blah. And so in a sense, like even that sort of becomes like some people may be more privileged to be better at it when it's competitive fitness.
Yes.
But if it's just for general physical preparedness and optimal health, it's
Right.
actually so inclusive. But that would be
Yeah.
how I would. We take it out of the race category. We take it out of a racial context. That's how I understand check your privilege, and it helps putting it back into a racial context. I remember working at a bar in Georgetown, and sheltered white kid from suburban Philadelphia, which you'd think I'd be more exposed to this type of stuff. Probably just so, again, check my privilege, like so.
Wasn't on your radar.
Yeah, oblivious to it, and then same with being at the academy, so oblivious to it. Even though I took courses in it and stuff, and you know what I mean. But
That counts.
but never actually had to experience it.
Yeah.
There was guys that worked in the kitchen, a couple guys that worked as bussers, and then 2 servers, and a guy who worked the front door, a couple women and stuff. And when the night would be over and we'd go to get cabs, they couldn't hail cabs. They were either darker skinned, Latin American. I can't remember which, either Guatemalan or Nicaraguan. I can't remember where. They were all a lot of some cousins and guys that would come up and work for the summer or something. Right. And then two black guys, 2 African American guys that worked in the kitchen. They were chefs, or they were the barbecue cooks. They were awesome. One dude, I bet you he would have been a really good CrossFitter. He used to wear a weight vest during his shift all night. Yeah. I'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "Getting working." And I was like, "You're freaking awesome." But they couldn't hail their own cabs. Right. Because if they went to hail their cab, the cabbie wouldn't stop and they would just drive right by. And so I would have to, if I was one of the later shift guys, I would have to hail cabs for guys, hold the cab, and then they'd come running in. And then at that point, it's illegal for and I don't know if this law has changed, how that works, if that's something that's been addressed. But to me, that was sort of, if I look at it, that's my first, I've never not gotten something because of the color of my skin. Right. That's eye-opening in the sense of, when I feel, what she offers is when you feel that sense of resentment or offense, you can't call me a racist. Hold on, check your privilege. Why do you feel that way? Have you stopped and paused and considered what privilege you're ignoring because of something you have available to you? And me, you, white, middle class, American dude, we hit the privilege lottery. That's what that definition I think offers. What do you think? I don't know.
I mean, we both grew up in very similar situations. Dad was working, but mom was always home. I'd get home from school and I'd actually be excited when mom wasn't home, because I knew that there was good, she's out running errands or something, and I get 40 minutes of peace, right? But how lucky was I that I got home and then I had someone that could drive me to practice. Like you said, it's just things I never thought about. Right. I always had a ride to practice.
Right.
You know what I mean? I always had a ride to a friend's house, So, but you're right. It's those things that we just never...
And I think it ties well back into the racism. Those are systemic prejudices, or, they're reinforced. Those prejudices continue to get reinforced by the systems of power. Right? So, they just must... Right? Kids just don't care enough to show up. If they cared enough, they would show up. Yeah. They're like, whoa. Right? That kid hasn't eaten in a day. That kid, has to go to work. He's got to take care of his 3 younger brothers or sisters or whatever. There's all kinds of things that you don't know. I don't know, because I'm just assuming based on my privileged experience that any of those other obstacles. And so you can't know until you say, okay, I want for you this. Talk to me about all of the things that are going to get in the way of that, and let's see which ones we can remove. Right. Let's see which ones, maybe I can move this target and let's move it closer or something. You know what I mean?
Have you ever seen that video? It was where these people were standing in a field, and it was, let's say there was 50 people, all different races, guys.
I have seen it. Yeah.
And he just starts naming off the things.
Yeah,
and it's
you've had to do
this is what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so that was something like that. It was probably.
I like that video from a standpoint of, I think it physically. I hope that professor or teacher did his due diligence of like trigger warnings and
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Like did the pre and the post of
No,
like,
I'm
we
sure
are going to
they-
do this experiment if you feel uncomfortable, because it clearly isolates out all of the
Well, you
people,
start to see
all
like
the
look at
men
some
of color.
Look at some of the body language as they
Yeah.
started to like everyone's chatting up, and you get to a certain point, you start to see people kind of
Right.
yeah.
Because that's an emotionally traumatic.
Yeah.
It can re-traumatize
yeah.
people, but I imagine they did. I'm going to go ahead and assume he did.
Yeah.
Hopefully he did.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would play that game.
Yeah. I'm glad someone else did.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for posting it on YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Next one. What do we got? We got like 4, 5, 7. We'll see. We'll try and move quickly. What time are we on? Oh, we got plenty of time. We're moving well. Intersectionality. So, coined by the brilliant race theorist and civil rights activist Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, the term intersectionality was born from Crenshaw's work to shed light on the ways in which experiences in both race and gender intertwine to uniquely impact the lives of Black women and women of color. Intersectionality as a theory and practice was quickly adopted by prominent Black feminists to describe the need they saw for a more holistic view of race and gender. Whew. I don't feel fully qualified to unpack that definition.
I'm still confused as to what it is exactly. So, maybe
So
you
it
can help
makes sense to me
Okay.
inherently. Like I feel like I
Right.
understand it, but what I don't feel like is that I'm fully qualified to then explain it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I think I would do it an injustice. And so I'll let that definition stand on its own, but I would offer again, as example, let's bring
Yeah.
it back to a CrossFit
Okay,
metaphor.
sure.
'Cause-
That'll make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are an athlete.
We're a political CrossFit podcast now. So
We're back to being a CrossFit
Yeah.
podcast. So you show up at the gym,
Okay, I show
and
up at
it's
the gym.
it's your first day, and you say to me, "I want to lose 30 pounds. I've got early onset type 2 diabetes, so my H1AC is high. I'm They're thinking about putting me on metformin, and I don't want to go on the medicine, and my knees always hurt, and whatever." As a CrossFit coach, there is intersectionality between how you would approach helping and treating this client to get them to their weight loss. Mm-hmm. What do you have what is influencing their current state of obesity and early onset type 2 diabetes? Like, what are the factors that you imagine are probably causing that to happen?
So it could be a nutrition thing. It could be the knees bothering him, so a lack of activity thing.
And the nutrition thing is probably also influencing the knee thing because of inflammation. Sure. What else? Like,
could be a genetic thing. Like
sure.
Could be,
Maybe they're
yeah.
just predisposed to it. What
Right.
else? What
what have we not touched on? You're a woman. Did we say no? It's me.
It's you. Let's say it's you.
Okay.
So, how many hours of work do they work each day?
Oh, true. So you're talking about like their lifestyle.
So
like,
maybe they're sitting for
are they
9
sedentary
hours.
lifestyle? What's
Yep.
their sleep?
Yeah, there
Right,
you
there
go.
we go.
What's their stress level?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, their mom just went into a nursing home and
Yeah.
he's stressing out about his dad being home by himself. So the intersectionality of all of those things. What if you only say like, you need to move more? We're going to get you in here and you're going to work out hard 5 days a week, and you don't address any of those other things.
Right.
What did you probably just do? We're probably going to cause the guy to put on more weight,
Yeah.
hurt his knee even more.
Get more stressed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from an understanding of like and the reason I come at that is that last sentence, or that last, intersectionality as a theory and practice was quickly adopted by prominent Black feminists to describe the need they saw for a more holistic view of race and gender. That when we talk about intersectionality, you can't ignore when policies address race, but ignore the fact that yet women still of equal or even more qualification and skill level don't make as much as their male counterparts. That's intersectionality.
Right.
And so then you layer on like, oh, by the way, and race has an effect on that, and background and where you went to school and that privilege and blah, 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 blah. At some point, for me, it becomes kind of these intertwined Venn diagrams that then also speak towards privilege. So like privilege could be defined or looked at through a construct or a lens of intersectionality, and then also racism. That all of that is sort of systemically designed to maintain the power balance of white male privilege sitting on top and not having to actually change anything. Because if I put practices in place that take intersectionality into consideration, I have to think like just because, so you're the minority in the gym, right? Like everybody, you come to the 515 or the 615, you come to a class. It can be any class. You come to a class and the majority of the class can do all of this stuff. And so for me, I say, well, you're the minority. You're not as important. No, like you're out. I gotta move towards the general. I gotta move towards the mean.
Right.
That does not take that intersectionality into consideration because like you can't move that fast. You are stressed out. You haven't gotten all that sleep, blah, 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 blah. And I don't offer you any sort of, I don't change my behavior as the coach to reach you and to get you to your goals. I just say either you make it or you don't.
Right.
And that systemically prejudices against you, which is out of line with what I said from the beginning that I want to help you. But instead, what do I think is, well, what if I were to address you as the driving factor? And I think to myself, can I create a system that better addresses each of those issues for everybody? So the person who's been coming for 10 years still has to go through the same skills and drills and build-ups and practices and behaviors that the new person goes to. The only difference is along that route, the new person just off-ramps and stays with that skill. This person can always benefit from maybe they just move through them a little bit quicker, but when I take it into that, so when I design a new system, if I take into consideration all of these different entities that are intersecting, well, now I've designed a system that truly is inclusive and broad, and each person can kind of just take what they need out of it, or you know what I mean, benefit from what they need. And the person who is most affected has been kind of offered solutions along the way. Again, I prefaced all of this with, I hope that is an appropriate and accurate definition, but that's how I understand it, because what that means then for me as action is I got to slow down. I got to really dig into and examine practices and policies and behaviors that I have in place, both personally and professionally. And I get to take into consideration somebody's background and the holistic picture of that person, that when they come and they say or they don't say they've got a problem, but based on body language, you know, you understand what, like, then I can look at it and go, well, you're right, the system's broken. I didn't take that into consideration. I didn't create a welcoming and inclusive environment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Assuming that's accurate. But that makes sense.
Sounds good to us.
Check.
All right. Well, and that's kind of a cool one, because then that leads into implicit bias. Right? The benefit, the beliefs that sit in the back of your brain and inform your actions without your explicit knowledge. And so I feel like a 10-year meditation practice that I have and continue to have helps with this, because intention and what I think does not matter if my behavior doesn't match that. Do you know what so
is this like if I'm driving through what seems to be a rough neighborhood and I don't think about it, I just lock the doors, roll up the windows, and keep driving. Even though in my mind I was like,
I'm not racist.
I'm not racist, but I'm rolling up my window as I drive through this neighborhood.
Right, like why that neighborhood, that's implicit bias. And so your behavior explains it. Now, it's kind of like you can play devil's advocate.
Bad neighborhood, I put up air quotes, FYI. So that can mean anything.
But at the same time, well, then I think too of because I've driven through bad neighborhoods in countries that aren't America, that legitimately were different neighborhoods. In, you know, if you drove through Talifar, like, you put a guy in the 50, you put a guy in the turret, versus if I was driving through just outside Taji, like, Taji was open markets and it was fine. Now, you know, I'm sure higher headquarters would have said, like, you have the same behaviors regardless. Like, that's why it's procedure, you know, TTPs. But at the end, I mean, you can't leave a guy in the gunner, the turret, 24 the whole route, because they cramp, or they, you know. And so it's like, when you knew you were coming up on places that habitually or consistently had more likelihood of direct contact, you put yourself in a position to be able to respond and protect yourself. So you could play devil's advocate with what you're saying. I think your example offers, like, okay, trust your behavior as the guide or the key, and then let that give you the pause or the moment to go, oh, do I have an implicit bias there that even though I don't want to think that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking?
That's what my actions are
exactly
saying. Yeah.
And where the mindfulness habit or practice, I feel like, is something that helps me, is I take a breath and I ask, what is this? What is that thought? Where does that thought come from? Why do I have that thought? Right? You stay with it as long as you possibly can. You don't ruminate on it and, like, I suck, I'm wrong, blah, blah, blah. No, you just actually look at it and, like, what is that feeling? What is that emotion? And this is, the example would be like, I'm tired. Okay, well, what does tired mean? Well, I feel it in my shoulders. Okay, well, is that tired or is that soreness? Is that heat? Is that tingling? Is that pain? Wait, pain. Define pain. What do you mean? Well, it's tight. Okay, well, what does tight mean? Right? You just keep unpacking it and unpacking it. And what you come to realize is it's an illusion. Yeah. None of it's real. It's all just ego and my story and narrative around it. And if you eventually, if you stay with that long enough as a practice, what you realize is, I've totally made it up. And you let it go. When you let it go, now all of a sudden the manifestation of that pain, tired, irritated, angry, frustrated, fill in the blank emotion word, was just you holding on to something completely that you were implicitly biased towards. And when you name it, look at it, you can unravel it like a knot, and it just goes away. And I say that like it just goes away. This is like the internal practice. Right. Systemically, big picture, it doesn't just go away. Yeah. But now we can honestly look at it and be like, you were locking those doors, not like if you had looked at that from it was a festival, right? There were people on their porches hanging out. There was, kids in the street playing stickball. I'm like, right? Like I'm This is like
this
a
is
rocky,
driving 1917,
1974. Like yeah, exactly. Like whee, yeah. Thanks. There you go. A little glimpse of like my
slow down. Watch the kid playing kick the can.
Yeah, my romantic idealism of America.
Hey, you guys want to play stickball?
There you go. So like that. Whoa. Oh God, there was just something about, there is that 1975, 76 documentary that just kind of resurfaced about, and they've re-interviewed the kids that are in the documentary. There's a parade going down the street and the kids think it's a parade, so they run out to like join the parade. It's a white supremacist parade trying to protest or like say, let's kick all of the African American and people of color out of our town. That's what the parade was doing, and these kids came down to join the parade. I haven't seen the documentary. I only watched like the quick clip on my NBC News feed, and they were interviewing the kids now. They're in their 50s.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they're laughing about it, like, yeah, we had no idea, whatever. But I looked at from one perspective. Oh, it's a great parade.
It's a parade.
Yeah. It was disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, and so like flip that. You drive through a bad neighborhood. Yeah. You look at it a bad neighborhood because you're associating, not you.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
That was the
like,
example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You look at it, you're associating bad based on an implicit bias.
Yeah.
And we all have them. Like, again, like take it out of the race, right? Yeah. Like I watch Drew is a perfect example as an athlete, and he'll appreciate this. Somebody sees him come in for a workout, right? Judge that book by its cover and be like, I got this guy. if it's a long workout, he's crushing you
Yeah.
because that dude's got an engine that won't quit.
Yeah.
And so, like, stand by. Boy can move.
You can even start that workout and be like, oh, this guy came out too hot. I got him. They're still going.
Drew gets work done.
Yeah, he does.
And so, like, that's a perfect example. The implicit bias
Yeah.
of don't judge that book by its cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
You take the next one.
All right. Affirmative action. Affirmative action is supposed to combat bias in work and education by mandating a certain amount of hires and admissions from minority groups. It is supposed to force a more level playing field.
Yeah. So, do you have an implicit bias against, or do you have an implicit bias in context or in association with the words affirmative action? Do you have any sort of, like, if I were to say to you, like, affirmative action, what is your emotional response to it?
That someone's getting picked for something not necessarily based on qualifications, but because of their look.
Right. And again, like, even just in your definition, I would share that implicit bias. It has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
I think because of, if we walk it back, because of our checking of privilege, because of our prejudice based on a reinforced systems of power, as two white guys, we look at it as affirmative action as something against us. When if you read the actual definition of it, if somebody can't get into position on a squat and get full depth of squat, what do? Give them
something to work on.
Give them the ball to squat to. Put a box underneath them.
Yeah.
Right? And so in a sense, what are you doing? You are acting in a way that combats bias, or somebody can't do pull-ups in Fran. What do you give them?
You can give them a band or a box for a jumping pull-up. So.
It forces a more level playing field. We practice affirmative action. Not full. It's a metaphor. I'm working here.
Scaling.
Yeah, scaling. But we call it scaling.
We call it scaling.
And nobody has a problem with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be ridiculous if we were to say, no, everybody lifts the same weight. You can't do it. Sorry. It's based on your qualifications and your skill level. That's it. Sorry. Nope. There is no leveling of the playing field. This is the playing field. People are like, this is stupid. I'm out of here. This is dumb. But in real life, like, you can't walk out of the game, right? The game is life. And it's like and so in a sense, I'm curious where our implicit bias comes from and our prejudice against those terms comes from. And so I think, I don't know the answer. I would actually love to have that conversation with somebody who understands it and could offer, like, well, look, here, this is when it works really well. This is when it doesn't work. These are the pressure points, and these are the things that make it fall apart. These are the things that have made it so freaking successful. You know what I mean? And like I feel like that's a political science and a sociologist's job.
From a personal standpoint, when I was trying to get in the fire department and I wrote Caucasian or white on my applications, I wasn't even getting an interview. And then one of my friends said, well, isn't your mother adopted? I said, yeah, but she's white. He goes, is she though? He's like, write other. He told me to write other on my applications. I wrote other and I started getting interviews and started going through. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I know there's a purpose to it, but it's like, and I don't, this is just speculation. I don't know. Maybe I just got lucky. Like maybe just for whatever reason I didn't hear and I did hear, you know? And so, but it does have that. So how do you get rid of that negative connotation?
Exactly.
Because it does. Like, it sits deep, and I was like, well, this sucks. But I also know that from my privilege, like, there's plenty of jobs that I did get interviewed for.
Because of your name and the color of your skin. And
yeah.
So I think I like the way you said that. Like, how do you have the conversation, or what does that look like to remove the inflammatory, politicized
It was also because I thought my mom
it.
might have been Native American. That's why I also said right other, because she was adopted from like out in like Montana somewhere. So that was possible. I'm just saying that's what my friend was like. Yeah, just do that.
Wasn't
like,
a lie.
Sure.
I just wasn't sure.
I don't know. She's probably Mediterranean. I don't know.
Oh my god. Okay.
So, anyway.
We'll move on from this one.
Yeah, just saying, like, that's what
it's a good thing you were on gym now and didn't become a firefighter.
But no, like I'd be lying if I didn't say I had some like in here, like, oh.
No. We're done.
Cool. almost there. But anyway, so I would love to hear the
right, like
how does it work, and how is it explained? How do you get rid of that stigma?
I guess because if I come to, for me, to read that last part of that definition, it is supposed to force a more level playing field. Oh, I like that. Let's do that. Like, and so if that's and if you break the word apart, affirmative action, like it's not. I hate passive aggressive. Like I like affirmative. Oh, an action. I'm an action oriented person. Like oh, I'm on board just by the words. But then if you say those words together in that context, I too have that immediate ingrained implicit bias against it, and I don't know why. And I want to better understand that. And so you know what I mean? Like that's okay, cool. Let's have that conversation. But if you before you got to define the term as it's defined, not well. If you knew in 1984, like hold on, like that to me sounds extremely emotional, and it seems like you're bringing on board a lot of other things that are we really talking about that term anymore? And we talking about that policy, or are we talking about something else? And I'm not smart. I'm not educated enough on it to be able to refute. I would like to see an actual conversation about it, but that's a different podcast, and that would be somebody else's job.
Yeah.
So our last one, tone policing. So I like this one because when someone, usually the privileged person in a conversation or situation about oppression, shifts the focus of the conversation from the oppression being discussed to the way it is being discussed. To me, I do this all the time to win an argument. And it's moving the argument away from what is actually being talked about because I feel uncomfortable and I feel like I need to win and I need to maintain my power position. I feel it in my face. I feel it in the back of my spine. Like I feel it come up as this like heat, and it comes in the tone of my voice and my facial expression and my body language changes, and it's a really shitty move. And so I like defining this because as we move into the conversation this Friday and in future conversations, the second I hear myself talking about format or the way somebody is describing something, I've tripped into tone policing, and it's inappropriate. And it's not just it's inappropriate, but it's in a more frustrating. It's ineffective.
Right.
It's no longer healthy and productive discourse. It's now just debate, an argument for the sake of being right. So that's how I understand it. And
so give me an example of that. Like if we were, I don't know, just like you were saying, we're talking about, I don't know, you growing up in, I don't know, the white privilege of growing up.
Let's talk about like wrestling.
Okay.
Right? And so you're talking about wrestling, and and I say, well, the Undertaker was just that was just an act. Like he actually never had any skill set, and he was just absolutely. I mean, like if you just look at his record of history, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, and you start to defend it, and you start to defend him, and be like, you have no idea what you're talking about, and you get loud, and maybe you get a little bit aggressive, because it is something you own, and it like you've identified with, and you get identified with it, and you get very, very passionate, and you get a little bit loud, and I go, whoa, man, don't get angry. Don't get aggressive with me. You're getting very loud. This is making me uncomfortable because you're getting very loud and angry. That's tone policing.
So what you did is tone policing.
So
my reaction is like natural because it's like, whoa, you're making these biases against this thing you really don't know anything about.
Right. You're in a sense, you're allowed to get a little loud.
Because I've been there.
Exactly.
With wrestling.
Right. But now take it right.
Yeah.
It is just wrestling. Instantly you get angry when I say that. But
also, The Undertaker just officially retired after 30 years.
That's what I went to. I saw some news thing about it. But right, so now take it to something where like your life has been in danger. Your kid didn't get your kid got kicked out of school because of some systemically racist approach or some policy of like, you know, the black boy is dangerous and aggressive. The white boy was just rambunctious and energetic. Right? Like that's where this instant and you and I are having a conversation
my kid
about
just got kicked out of school because he was told he was dangerous when all he did was blah, blah, blah.
Hey, whoa, man. Like I'm not saying, you know, and I'm telling you that you can't have this conversation with that tone around me. That's tone policing.
Got it.
And it's usually the person who is in the position of privilege and power that calls out
Right.
the other person.
Right.
It's a shitty move.
Yeah.
And it destroys any healthy discourse.
Mm-hmm.
We are allowed to have this conversation in whatever way facilitates it coming out. And then offer back and forth of like, hear what you're saying. What I hear is, there's a book, I used a book when I taught called They Say, I Say, is that the first move is I have to repeat back what you've said. And then I have to offer what the words you said make me feel, or what I heard, or what I thought. And then I can either agree, disagree, or maybe offer some sort of agreement, disagreement, like middle road or something. And then you get to offer that back too. And you say the person's name out loud, right? You say it like, I hear you, Eric. Eric, what I heard was da-da-da-da-da-da. And then there's room there. You'd be like, no. Okay, if that's what I said, what I meant was, and be like, okay, cool. What I hear you, Eric, then clarifying is, and it's slow, and it's methodical, and it's healthy, and it's not about tone, and it's not about how it's being said. It's what is actually being said.
Yeah.
And we have to, and then it offers us room to come to some sort of middle ground.
Yeah.
So I loved ending
good.
on that, because that's the biggest thing, is we can all fall victim to tone policing. Usually if you're the one falling victim to it, check your privilege, because you're probably using your systemic power to bully the other person into not saying what they need to say.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
These are great definitions.
Yeah. Thanks, Joan.
Thanks, Joan.
All right. Gratitude, 30 seconds or less.
Cool. You have to be real quick. So, whatever. I've used you before. I'll use you again. But you're my gratitude this week. So I saw the newsletter, and it was just my I do want to do something different. And I already started doing something different, but I was I wasn't ready to put it out yet. So it's just kind of hey, things are changing. Here we go. And I'm kind of excited about it. So taking the newsletter is something as simple as hey man, and you straight up said, you go, I feel like the newsletter is just kind of
It's just notifications.
It's just notifications now. It's just kind of this thing, and I can't remember what the word that you said, but it's it's funny that you said it, because I was I kind of feel like that too. It's just kind of this thing I throw out, and it's become very it's this thing that I have to do every week.
Yeah.
And it's it's boring, and so when you made that comment, it was make it your blog.
Yeah.
I was cool, I think I'm going to do that. So I've been thinking about it and got some stuff.
And what's cool is then it repurposes. If there's something you write or came up with and you're like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Now you got a week's worth of stuff on Instagram and social media and stuff. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. You do that with mine, with the blog, right? You're my editor.
Yeah.
You're my back cover editor.
Nice.
Cool. Mine's Charity.
Which is a good one.
Last week, she asked to have a conversation with me, and I have to say I have not had that fun and challenging, and I wouldn't say uncomfortable, because it wasn't uncomfortable, but it legitimately, she offered me a completely different perspective on using social media as a power, as a tool, for the sake of influencing circles of influence outside of just that platform. I don't fully agree with some of but again, it's a long, this is a long conversation to have, and I'm not, but I went and got a book, and I'm reading, I found an ebook on free on Kindle on social media advertising and using it for,
cool.
I forget exactly the title on it,
yeah.
but but more in the sense of how to expand your audience, how to expand your reach,
right,
using these different types of platforms. In this context, and it came right on the heels of the flooding of the Tulsa rally, the Trump rally in Tulsa, by the Z generation, Zoomers, as they're being called, that weren't actually going to go. So in a sense, it's kind of like an insurgency in which she said that. Or she didn't say that. She just described hey, it can be used to push impact or push agendas or push ideas out to other circles because of the volume and the speed. And the volume and the speed is its benefit.
Yeah.
I still think there's some caution there, just like any insurgency, but you're using the more powerful entity's power against it as a weakness, That's an insurgency by definition. And I'm on board with that. I like insurgencies. I have some skill sets.
You have some skills.
But it was either way, the talk offered,
Sorry.
I was willing to be curious, and that was freaking fun. So thanks, Charity. And we'll keep it coming.
Okay, sorry. That was a message from Meg.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You got to
But
go.
no, but it was an old message, so I'm glad I read it now.
Okay.
Anyway, so awesome. This is fun. This is good.
Yeah.
Fun. I don't know if fun's the right word, but this has been.
It feels very tight-ropey. Do you know what I mean? Like you're kind of we're always on the
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
Like we keep pushing our boundaries.
Yeah.
We want to have it, but
Yeah.
those are some definitions. I'm trying to think of trying to make like a one-pager for
cool.
folks, like a PDF one-pager
Yeah.
of this, and then the readings. It won't actually be one page, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But then the readings that we're going to do at the beginning of the book club, the reading experience excerpts.
That's gonna be good.
So yeah,
I'm
all right.
excited about the book club. Oh. Hey, how many golfers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
Most people would be like 4.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not 4.
4?
Maybe
4?
Maybe 5. No, maybe 6. No, okay, 7. It's I don't know. It's not great. Never mind.
I don't get it.
Because I feel like golfers always change.
'cause you're
I'm not a
keeping-
golfer, so I don't. But you keep changing your score. I don't know. There's probably a better one out there. But I saw that one. I was like, oh, that one's
it's
kind of
funny.
clever. I mean,
Golfers are
golfers
funny.
will get it, right? But I
Do
probably
you want me to tell one that's a little bit less?
Yeah,
a little
please.
bit less clean.
Please.
How can you spot the blind guy at? Brad actually told me this joke a long time ago, but I saw it on the Dad Says. How can you spot the blind guy at the nudist colony? It's really not that hard.
Oh man.
All right, folks. We hope we've offended all of you.
On that note.
We'll see you next week.
That's.